Now I have come back to life!
Yeah, no, I heard that. I got that. Welcome back.
And we're back!
We are back, baby. We're back. We are back. We are back.
Yes, we're back.
What he means is Old Testament, Mr. Mayor. Real wrath of God type stuff. Fire and brimstone coming down from the skies. Rivers and seas boiling.
40 years of darkness, earthquakes, volcanoes, the dead rising from the grave.
It's manifest destiny. You can't fight it, neither can I.
Whoa! Dogs and cats living together. Massive carrier.
Good morning, Vietnam!
Hey everybody, welcome back to the intersection of faith, family, and filmmaking. You're listening to Fearless with Mark and Amber, a behind the scenes of our filmmaking ministry, Fearless Features, where we are creating educational, documentary films about the issues impacting our culture and society from a biblical perspective, and pursuing truth above all else. I'm Amber Archer, and joining me is my husband, author, director, speaker, Mark Archer.
Give daddy some sugar!
You can learn more about us and the movies we're making by visiting fearlessfeatures.org. It's also a great place to make that one-time or monthly donation if you are passionate about reaching the lost for Christ through film. Visit fearlessfeatures.org to share your support today.
Did you ever think that maybe there's more to life than being really, really, really ridiculously good looking?
Hello, my love.
Hello, my love. Back
You're
for another
looking
episode.
Really, really ridiculously good looking, as usual.
Well, it is anniversary week. So
It is our anniversary week.
just had birthday week last week, anniversary week this week. So
Endless cake.
cutesies, as the kids would say.
Cutesies. Really?
Hey, what?
That is not correct.
Unbelievable. I feel targeted. I feel targeted.
Hold on.
That's a bunch of crap.
Well, hey, so we have fun first half
Yes.
of the show. Second half, you'll see how it all ties together.
Informational second half.
Yes. So we wanted to do something fun since it is anniversary week. So
That's
we
right.
got married on a Friday the 13th. And this year, June, Friday the 13th, it finally falls in the month of June. You know,
Mhm.
there are Friday the 13th, but they're hardly ever in June.
Yeah.
When we got married. And we didn't do it on purpose because it was Friday the 13th. Just got to clarify. It was just happened to be the day that our photographer was available.
And it was actually cheaper. Everything was cheaper on a Friday.
Yeah.
Which was surprised me.
Yeah.
But apparently the big day for weddings is Saturday.
Apparently,
So
everybody's off. It's weekend.
Yeah. So we got things for cheaper on Friday.
Hey,
It was a good deal.
good deal. But however, when we told everybody, when we started telling people, they're like, "Oh, that's so unlucky. You don't want to start your marriage off like that."
Yeah. It's
And so,
no.
so we decided. I thought, it would be fun to look up why is Friday the 13th unlucky, just to, put to rest this idea. Because hey, we're still here.
Hmm.
We've been together 20 years this year.
Mhm.
It's 17 years married.
That's right.
I mean, it can't be all that bad.
If there was some sort of a curse, it apparently doesn't work on us.
Not here at least.
You keep using the word.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, no. I have
Friday
other
the-
things. Yeah.
Oh, wait, there's date.
I have other things to talk about here.
We're very confused today.
No, we're not really confused. We're just excited. It's like, okay.
Okay.
Okay. Shout out to Sherry, listener in Crown Point. She wrote in and said, I just want to let you know I listen to your podcast and I love them. I feel like you and Mark inform us of things to help us more understand what's going on, but you both seem so down to earth. And so often I find myself smiling and laughing out loud while listening, because we're confused people. I would love to meet you guys someday. Wished I could make it to Noblesville for the screening of your movie. I live in Crown Point, Indiana. Just want to let you know you're making an impact. Well, thank you, Sherry. We really appreciate you tuning in and listening. And this is why we do what we do.
Here's for you, Sherry.
So many kind souls in the universe.
In the universe. Thank you, Sherry.
Okay.
And for other people who want to send us messages, we love reviews. We love messages. I mean, things that you'd love for us to discuss and talk about. I mean, we'll take them all into consideration. But you can go to fearlessfeatures.org/mailbox. And you can.
We especially love the bad reviews. We have fun with those.
Oh, do we ever have those too?
Haters gotta hate.
Good and the bad. But what Sherry was talking about there about the Noblesville screening is we have an upcoming screening July 11th at 7 p.m. at Life Church, Indiana, in Noblesville, of our movie Title IX. And so, if anybody's been paying attention, a lot of us have, if you're listening to this show, we are talking a lot about what's happening in education, and especially the revisions of many of the laws.
Yes.
So Title IX is one of those. So admission is free. Don't miss it. Equip yourself with knowledge for the new school year, because this is July 11th. Come, it's free. And if you can't make it, you can always watch Title IX today at title9movie.com. And I'll leave all these links in the show notes for you guys. July 11th, 7 p.m., Life Church, Indiana. Life Church, Noblesville, Indiana.
Yeah.
And we're still working on Dysphoria and Title IX, trying to get them onto Prime.
Yes.
I
Prime
just
Video.
checked on them this morning. They're still
pending review.
However, just as a side note, so some of you remember there is a full Spanish dub of The Mind Polluters. And we tried to put that on as a separate title. And it was rejected because it's the same movie with a different soundtrack.
Right.
And I went around with Amazon and they said, no, you need to add it as a separate soundtrack to The Mind Polluters. I checked on it this morning. It appears that the only thing that has made it past QC is the Spanish subtitles. So for now, there's at least the Spanish subtitles on The Mind Polluters. I'm still trying to figure out if we can get the full Spanish dub audio on there. I didn't have time to go into it. Anyway, so
update on that. There you go.
FYI.
Yes, and also about meeting us, we're also going to be, let you guys know, next April. So April 6th through the 8th or 9th through the 11th, Mark and I have been invited to speak at the Answers Women Conference. And the overall theme for this is Anchored. It's pursuing biblical sexuality in a turbulent world. And so we are excited to come and share not only our testimony and stories, but also a lot of the things that we've been learning just over the past several years making these documentaries. So we're excited to join other speakers. There's Ken Ham, Heidi St. John, Georgia Purdom, Monica Klein, who's in many of our Fearless films, Vodi Bakum, Megan Basham, Rosaria Butterfield, Christopher Wan, and Penny Young Nance. So we're excited to join an all-star lineup. Avery Foley.
I am thrilled. I'm excited that we were asked. It's an honor to be asked to be part of something like that.
Yes, it is, absolutely.
You know, we interviewed Ken Ham for The Mind Polluters, and he's also in Principalities.
Yeah.
And just got to, and we've spent fair amount of time. We had an annual pass for a while, and went to. If you have not been to the Ark and the Creation
I was just gonna say the same thing.
do it today. It'll change your life.
Make plans. I still remember the first time we got off of the bus to walk in to go and see the Ark, and the way that it comes alive. The pages of Scripture come to life immediately as soon as you approach.
The first time you walk up to it and you get a sense of the scale, and it is as immersive of an experience as anything you'll see at Disney or Universal. I mean, it's really good. It's way better. And yeah, it really is humbling. It changes your world.
Well, especially when we talk about in the days of Noah and how things are going to go from bad to worse, and as in the days of Noah. And you gotta, if you just stop and kind of ponder, imagine the ridicule that he faced while building the ark, staying faithful and true in a turbulent world. I don't think we're even close to what Noah experienced. However, it is bad because we've never experienced what we're experiencing now.
Yeah, it's the thing that's amazing to me from an engineering standpoint. When you're walking through it, and they've got all these displays and side displays explaining things like how they handled ventilation, and as you walk through and you realize we're very proud of ourselves. We think that we're so great with modern technology, but you realize that this was 8 people who built this whole thing, metallurgists, carpenters, farming, everything. They knew all of this stuff. And I look at it and go, I wouldn't know how to make my own nails. I have had engineering training, so I can tell you how it's done. But if you said, go make nails, I can't. Right. I don't know how to do that. They literally did all of this. So it's amazing. That's why it's so humbling, is you realize how smart they were.
We think our advanced technology, but they were advanced in their technology.
And the way that it was built, and the interlocking timbers and everything, it's quite fascinating.
It is. So make plans if you haven't already. It is quite a sight to see.
So anyway, so we are back to talking about Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th, yes. So we got married at the top of what used to be.
It was the Fort Wayne National Bank building. Now it's the PNC Bank.
So the 25th and 26th floor. So it closed in 2009 is what I saw. But it used to serve high-end clients from the 25th and 26th floor, what was then called the Fort Wayne National Bank building. So it was a Summit Club. When we got married there in 2008, it was beautiful. It really is a 360 view of the city. And so that's where that started. But
and I remember we were thinking about an outdoor wedding.
Yes.
And I said, that's a really bad idea. And sure enough, that day it rained.
Yeah.
And
I think they were just building the Parkview field, the baseball field.
They might have been.
I just remember looking out and seeing that. Anyway, it's been a while. It's been 17 years.
I was glad that we weren't outside.
I've slept since then. So anyway, on the possible origins of Friday the 13th, folklore, fear, and fun. So this is from an article from the Library of Congress. So most people know that Friday the 13th is considered an unlucky day. So I'm going to read parts of this. This guy does a lot of research and just history, backstory of Friday the 13th. Spoiler alert, nobody really knows why Friday the 13th is considered unlucky. So anyways, this guy, he said, I had some fun researching the roots of this belief back in September when the Library of Congress received a call from NPR requesting to interview me about Friday the 13th. Not surprisingly, I found facts and speculation as well as intriguing new evidence. I also encountered what I often call metafolklore, folk stories about folk beliefs. In this post, we'll look into what I found. So from the Norse gods to the Knights Templar, from mathematics to religion, and from French plays to American horror movies, let's look at everyone's favorite day for bad luck. And we were just excited because there are a lot of Friday the 13th, but it hardly falls in June when we got married. So a bit about the NPR interview. We were already interviewing my friend Moria Marsh, a folklorist and librarian at Indiana University, and wanted another voice and perspective. We did an interview, but unluckily for me, the story was cut in length. And they didn't use my voice. It was not all misfortune for me, however. They did quote him in the article, blah, blah, blah. The idea of Friday as an unlucky may have derived from the biblical tradition that Jesus was crucified on a Friday. This in turn led to Fridays being observed as fasting days throughout the Christian world. Being expected to abstain from your favorite foods and activities could certainly make the day seem unlucky. And in support of this theory, Friday is not unlucky in Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, or most other religions, or in most countries where the majority religion is not Christianity. So, many people cite the Bible for the idea that 13 is unlucky too, claiming that Judas, who betrayed Jesus, was the 13th guest at the Last Supper. The fact neither In fact, neither the order of the guests' arrival nor their seating arrangements is mentioned in the Bible, so there's no obvious sense in which Judas was the 13th. However, the presence of 13 people at the Last Supper could be behind the idea of unlucky 13. Okay.
It's a stretch, but
It is a stretch. Well, that's why it's fun to go through all these and think, where did all these come from?
yeah.
Well, and then there's these other ones, these tarot cards. Like I said, this is a really, really long article.
And tarot cards, by the way, not something.
Well, it's the tarot death cards.
Yeah. These are not things that Christians should be messing around with, same as Ouija boards.
Right.
Remember we talked about the occult and Alice Bailey and all that, so tarot cards are part of that White Lodge magic, not to be messed with.
No, I wanted to get to, because there was one that caught my eye, the Knights Templar, because you've done a lot of research on those. Oh, okay. It's hard to determine when the ideas of Unlucky 13 and Unlucky Friday were combined into a belief that Friday the 13th is unlucky. However, metafolklore has an answer there too. Search the web and you'll find lots of sites relating to the origin of a belief in Unlucky Friday the 13th to the destruction of the Knights Templar, which occurred on Friday, October 13th, 1307. Cross-reference check.
Yes.
That's correct.
That is correct.
This theory was popularized by Dan Brown's novel, The Da Vinci Code, but historians have never been convinced. Although the dates of the initial attack on Templars is accurate, no one seems to have connected this historical event to the belief in Friday the 13th until the 20th century. During the Middle Ages, few people would have known the exact date of the decree outlawing the Templars, so the belief would have to date to a time when it became widely known, more likely modern than medieval. To paraphrase my earlier blog on Ring Around the Rosie and the Plague, I'm going to have to go back and read that one now. Fun facts for you.
This is called a bunny trail.
Today's scholars want to know, how did the first person who claimed a connection between the events of 1307 and the belief in Unlucky Friday the 13th find out about that connection? And why can't we find whatever evidence they had? Until we see some evidence of a connection dating back to the Middle Ages, this assertion seems more like a modern guess. Okay, so it goes on, and I'll leave it for you if you're interested in Friday the 13th, because I mean it's just funny to see the superstitions as it progresses over the years. I mean, because he does have a lot through the late 1800s, early 1900s, and just how people still believe today. So if you're listening to this and you're a believer, you do not need to worry about Friday the 13th.
Fear not the 13th. Well, it's interesting, when you were reading that and you brought up the Templars, and like you said, I've studied them a lot. In fact, if you see any of my social media, I mean, I'm always posting stuff, images of knights, especially Templars.
Yes, because what was the origin of the Knights Templar?
So, funny you should ask, because I have it here. So first off, their destruction did come about in 1307 with King Philip IV, or Philip IV. Let me read this. So there are several organizations that claim to be Knights Templar organizations, and the one that I have looked at that seems the most normal, if you will, is the Knights Templar. I'll put their link up. It's ktorder.com, and they are the non-Masonic. Okay, so we've talked about Freemasonry, and a lot of Freemasonry, and that, like the Knights of Columbus, things like that, is all kind of in this Freemasonry, which has interesting history in its roots, but it has turned into, Freemasonry has turned into a satanic cult,
unfortunately.
And the Templars go all the way back, and I have a little bit of their history here. The Knights Templar Order is a Christian organization, and as such, we reject all forms of racism as anti-biblical. and reject all forms of political hatred, no matter from what end of the political spectrum it comes from. We firmly believe in the dignity and humanity of all people, regardless of color, creed, ethnicity, or political persuasion. This does not mean we necessarily agree with them or their beliefs, but as committed Christians, we are convinced of the principles of free speech, lawful assembly, and freedom of expression for all mankind. And I've started. They actually have their own church, a small chapel, and every Sunday they do a service there. Now it's
Where?
tiny. It's in the UK.
Okay.
It's a tiny town, like like the size of our office. It's tiny.
Okay.
But I've listened to his sermons, and he's, they're other than that they're, dyed in the wool, got to be King James versions. I that's a little beyond me, but they're pretty solid theologically. So on behalf of our more than 5,000 dedicated knights and dames of the Knights Templar worldwide, we welcome you to their
Knights and dames.
Yes.
I love the
We are an interdenominational association of active Christians with both clergy and lay members from all walks of life. Our order follows the highest chivalric ideals of the medieval Order of Knights Templar, which was founded by Hugh de Payens in 1119. But we make no claims to be direct inheritors of their noble history as others do. Ours is a modern order built on sound activities, benevolent, practical, and diplomatic, which aims to improve society.
chivalry is not dead.
Chivalry is not dead. The medieval Knights Templar, best known to us today as the famed Warriors of the Crusades, were a devout military religious order that uniquely combined the roles of knight and monk in a way the Western medieval world had never seen before. Originally, they were known as the Poor Knights of Christ and the Temple of Solomon. This is where this line blurring comes in, because if you study Freemasonry, they're all about the Temple of Solomon. Okay. Or more simply, as the Knights Templar. In a famous letter written in the 1130s in praise of the new knighthood, St. Bernard's of Clairvaux elevated the Templar order above all other orders of the day, establishing the image of the Templars as a fierce spiritual militia for Christ. I think that's interesting. He regarded them as a new species of knighthood previously unknown in the secular world.
Wait a minute, pause.
Yes.
Could you just imagine? I think, can you imagine the men in the churches today?
Yeah.
If everyone understood and took on sort of that valiant
Yes. This is what
demeanor.
This is what I harp on all the time, is that men in the churches today in the body of Christ, need to be chivalric knights. They need to embrace those ideals again.
And you're not putting on the physical armor. You're putting on the armor of God.
Right.
And leading the charge and set apart. I think that's the thing. They were obviously leading differently to where how did it say? Militia. No.
They were called a holy militia fighting for Christ. Well, the way that they were formed, let me read a little more of this. The Templars officially originated in the Kingdom of Jerusalem in 1118 AD, when 9 knights, mainly French, vowed to protect pilgrims on the dangerous roads leading to Jerusalem. And I thought,
doing the right thing.
yes, isn't that interesting? Lord of the Rings,
Yeah.
the 9,
Yeah.
the ring wraiths were once the race of men. The 9, okay. Anyway, I'm just saying that's probably where he got it. These courageous knights gained the favor of King Baldwin II of Jerusalem, who granted them part of his palace for their headquarters, which was in the southeastern part of the Temple Mount, called Solomon's Temple. So this is where they get their tie-in with Solomon's Temple. They were generally seen as complementary to the Hospitallers, recognized as an order of the church by the papacy in 1113, but not militarized until the 1130s. The Hospitallers who cared for sick and weary pilgrims in their convent in Jerusalem. That's where we get hospital.
That makes me think of the Good Samaritan.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
So anyway, I'll sum it up. The Templars, they were formed by these 9 original knights who dedicated themselves to protecting Christians who were making a pilgrimage from parts of Europe to Jerusalem because it was very dangerous. And so that's where the noble knights, this is where this all came from. They were the Knights Templar. And the way that they grew in power was they actually basically pioneered our modern banking system. So people, if you wanted to travel from England, you didn't want to carry all of your wealth with you. And so the Templars they would have a station there at your home base where you could deposit your money and get a letter of credit. Now you're not carrying all that gold. You have a letter of credit. And then you go to Jerusalem and withdraw based on that letter of credit. This is where we get, the notion of traveler's checks.
Right. So you're not being robbed.
So you can't be robbed of anything.
Right.
This is one of the ways that the Templars gained so much power. And they're at the height of their dominion. I mean, and they were around for several hundred years. And they were a military force, and they were also, protectors, and they financed things as well. That's why King Philip came after them, because he owed them so much money, and he was scared of them. And so he declared that he made up all these accusations about them and came after them and basically wiped them out. But at their height, they had 600 or 700 castles all over Europe. I mean, they were huge. They were the dominant military force. So anyway, so that's the Knights Templar. I just love their history and what they stood for a long time. And that's where so many of our legends of noble knights come from. They all had ties to the Templars.
Right, some legends are folklore. Friday the 13th.
Sure.
Don't have any, but it was fun as we were looking into it how the Knights Templar got brought into Friday the 13th. So there you have it.
And if you ever watch, I don't totally recommend the movie, but Kingdom of Heaven is about the Templars, and
I think I just yelled in everybody's ear though.
It's an interesting film because of it's a Ridley Scott film, and so it's got pretty good imagery. And
I don't think I've seen that.
Yeah.
Have I seen that?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
So
what was it called again?
Kingdom of Heaven.
No.
It's got Orlando Bloom and Liam Neeson.
Oh, well, I like those two.
Yeah, it's good.
They're good actors.
Anyway, so Friday the 13th, Templars. Okay. So I guess we'll go to break. We'll come back, and we've got we're going to talk about school vouchers because we got a lot of questions about those.
Oh, yes.
So
okay.
We'll be right back.
This may sound really shocking, but it's not really surprising considering that international research repeatedly portrays that 0.5 up to even 3% of our male population has some form of pedophilic interest.
What they'll do is they'll pick this identity group, and their goal is to turn this identity group into a victim status where they can claim rights at law.
We must fight discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity, and we must prosecute those who target victims for violence because of who they are or whom they love.
The Biden administration is amending Title IX to expand protections to LGBTQ students in schools that receive federal funding.
What's happening in the public schools now is a deliberate attempt to convince our children that they may be transgenders. It's being portrayed as cool.
Used to be fashionable by being gay. Now you're fashionable by being trans, and everybody celebrates you. Well, you want to be celebrated.
We are in a battle right now that is far beyond Democrat and Republican. We are talking now in the realm of good versus evil.
Sexual predators and comprehensive sex education both break down inhibitions. That's what they start with. They also gain trust with the child and then slowly start to get them towards sexual activity.
Anything goes. You are teaching children adult child sex, you're teaching transgender issues, and children are moldable and influenced by that.
They said, okay, now we need you and your team to be able to explain what homosexuality is to a 4-year-old student.
To introduce this kind of material at that age, frankly, it's child abuse.
You're going to teach our children that it's okay for any two children of any age, of any sex, to have sexual intercourse with each other as long as two components are present, one's using a condom and they both give consent. Did I hear that correctly?
It's not a neutral venue. There's no such thing. Okay, the schools are doing your job. They are discipling your children, but they're not discipling them in the faith of Jesus Christ.
It's only the exceptional child that even survives that system. Most do not survive, most have not survived.
They believe that children are sexual from birth and that they deserve and have the right to be sexually active and to seek sexual pleasure. And if anyone is stopping them from that, then you are judging and oppressing them.
Even kindergarten now, they're wanting to teach them more and more perverse information and acts and put that into the children's minds. And once that poison is in a child's mind, it doesn't leave. They'll always remember what they learned. And it's by design, it's orchestrated.
In my humble opinion, it will be worse before it gets better.
Watch The Mind Polluters, now available on Prime Video.
Okay.
Okay.
So, had a question on Facebook. Someone asked, because I do a lot of reels, right, based on the podcast.
Snippets. So snippets. Just for everybody who isn't familiar with what a reel is.
It's a snippet.
And has an opinion of not enough information.
I get interesting comments on the reels.
The purpose of the reel is to lead you to the full conversation.
The full episode. That's why I put the YouTube link in there.
Just so we're clear, I don't want anybody to be, misled.
Right. Because a little bit of information can be a dangerous thing.
Oh, go ahead.
So one of the questions that I got, and this was a legitimate good question.
Yes.
Somebody asked, because we were talking about the school vouchers, and somebody asked, okay, what is it that you're saying about the vouchers?
Mm-hmm. Because it's a huge topic, and not just in Indiana where we are, but across the nation.
Yes.
Because for decades, people have been warning about the vouchers.
Yes.
It's been tried many different ways. Go ahead. I'll let you pick it up from there.
So what I thought was, let's just share a section of Title IX.
Yes.
And this is a clip of Alex Newman explaining what the plan is for the vouchers and where this has come from.
Yes, and in case you need more information, Alex has a plethora of documentation and information because I have seen him on a lot more interviews because the conversation is really heating up across the nation about the vouchers.
And you'll hear that he addresses that. So I'm just going to play this. This is about 5 minutes long. So here we go.
Well, I'll start off by saying that the people that I know, for the most part, who are pushing school choice are wonderful people, people who I agree with on almost everything. And they look at this as just a difference in tactics. I consider it much more significant. I view the school choice movement at the highest levels. You know, we're talking people like Betsy DeVos and people like that. I view it as an effort to ultimately reassert control over all the people who are breaking away. Right now, we have millions and millions of families who've left the system. We've got millions of families that are homeschooling their children right now. We've got millions of families that have chosen private schools, and we've got millions more that are going to leave in the years ahead as the system becomes increasingly radical. And I think in one sense, the education establishment doesn't mind that so much for right now, because these are the parents who would be the most problematic. These are the parents who would be at every school board meeting. These are the parents who would be testifying in their state legislature. These are the parents who would make it as difficult as possible to advance this agenda. So I think for the moment, they'll tolerate us being outside the system. But eventually, they need to bring us all back in, because it's like the boy who pointed out that the emperor had no clothes. As soon as that one little kid who didn't get brainwashed says the emperor is naked, everybody else might look and say, wow, he is naked, and we can say that. And so there's a very serious threat posed by all the people who are outside the system right now. And, you know, I spent a lot of time living in Sweden. And I tell people, I used to tell people they were a couple generations ahead of us. Now I think the time difference has been reduced quite significantly, maybe 20 years ahead of us. But they always try out this, the elites always try out the crazy stuff they want to bring to America in Sweden first. And so it just so happened that while I was living in Sweden, we watched this process come to fruition. They had used the same rhetoric, that the money should follow the child, that there should be school choice, that the government shouldn't just have a total monopoly on education. Parents should be allowed to spend the money allocated for their children wherever they want, with whatever type of school they want. And that worked fine for a while. Every private school in Sweden that I know of, with one exception, the one where the aristocrats send their children, started taking the government money. And then while we were living there, it really reminded me of a mousetrap. Right? The free money for the schools, the tax money, was the cheese in the mousetrap. And all the private schools came and ate from the cheese, and then the trap closed, and they were all stuck. And they passed a law, I think this was in 2011, might have been 2012, they passed a law called the Education Reform Act or something. And what it required was that every private school that was taking government money start teaching the government curriculum. I actually called the education ministry to make sure I was understanding this correctly. They said, no, that's how it works. No more Bible in school, no more prayer in school. And for good measure, they banned homeschooling in the same bill. So they shut off every exit from the system. And thankfully, most of the homeschool families fled the country. A lot of them went to Finland, some went to Norway, Denmark, and other places. But I'm very concerned that that's what we'll see happen in America with school choice. Once they start getting the private schools and the homeschoolers dependent on tax money, the government control will follow right afterward. And you know, once these schools become addicted to government money, there's not going to be any going back. It's not they're going to say, oh, okay, well, we'll lose half of our students and we'll go back just so we can preserve our independence. That's going to be very, very difficult. And so once the government money starts flowing, the government control will follow, and it'll probably start gradually. They'll say, well, you know, you can't discriminate against LGBTQP in your hiring decisions, right? Well, that means we have to hire, you know, a guy in a dress to teach our kindergarten class. So it'll start with little things like that, and then it'll get to the point where you want to teach the kids that the Bible is true? Don't be ridiculous. We can't fund that with tax money. And so we're already seeing that happen, I think. We're in Florida right now. Florida has the most school choice of any state. And it was a few years ago now, but it seemed like all the big newspapers in the state started at the same time banging the war drums about how all these Christian schools that were getting tax money were teaching children that there was something wrong with the LGBT movement. They were discriminating in their hiring. They said, we need regulations. We need the state to come in and say that you can't do that. So my big concern is that the tax money will be used to rope everybody back into the system. And that's why incredible people in this field like Charlotte Iserbyt were so adamant about it. And again, I say it with all due respect. I've got a lot of good friends who I agree with on just about everything, who have said, well, the situation is so urgent. Anything we can do to get the kids out of the government schools now is worthwhile. But you know, I just see these enormous red flags, and I urge people to be incredibly cautious.
So that's why. That's why we have cautioned people. And just like Alex said, because he has watched this happen And if you're in the education system, you understand that you don't just roll things out into a school system and say, let's try this. These things they're tested somewhere, and then they come along and say, here's how we're going to do this. Here's how we're going to implement it, because it's all been planned somewhere else.
Well, it's no different. I mean, we literally just watched this with the Title IX. When the Biden administration did the rewrite, they sent it to all of the schools and said, you must comply. Okay, well, now that administration is no longer in office. It's reversed and repealed. So now and go back to social emotional learning that we were talking about. I mean, these things start rolling in. And unfortunately, unfortunately, I mean, we get it. There needs to be some sort of structure and things to follow so that everybody's on the same page. You know, you've got your individual department of education in each state that kind of has a guideline for all of the schools to follow. But then all of a sudden, it's changing so dramatically. I mean, my heart goes out to a lot of the teachers in education who just want to teach, because you keep having there's all of these new licensings that you have to acquire, and I don't know.
So, and don't hear me wrong. I'm not saying, I understand that you have to put rules and regulations in place for this stuff, because otherwise what happens? Fraud. So I get it. It has to be regulated, but how difficult is it to imagine? I mean, you're literally one election away from this being turned into a fishhook, and then you are stuck. And I'll give you an example of, I mean, just in our area there, I can think of several private Christian schools that are affiliated with churches. I don't know the exact statistic, but I'm guessing most private Christian schools have a church affiliation, because it's very difficult for a private Christian school to exist without a church supporting it initially, because it costs a lot of money to start and run a school. I understand that. But you know, I can give you an example of one that we have watched very closely, that because of what they justify as cost sharing, and again, I understand, because many decades of a church not getting a return, if you will, pouring money into and paying the bills and supporting a Christian school, and at some point you hope that it will have enough enrollment to where it can start to maybe repay that into the church. I get it. But we know of one in particular that now that the vouchers in Indiana just revised the vouchers, so now basically everybody gets them. There's no sliding scale anymore, so the money is just flowing. And so the church now is taking, $900,000 per year from the school budget back to the church budget. And they're saying, well, this is part of cost sharing. And I understand part of it is cost sharing. But like Alex pointed out, so what happens when an election happens, and honestly, it could be under the Republicans, where they start saying, well, you can't do this now, and you can't do this. Now, instead of just the school addicted to it, because the private schools in Indiana are exploding. They're awash in cash compared to what they were. I'm not saying that I understand it's still not fully enough, but compared to how they were, they're rolling in it. And now the churches are getting addicted to that cash flow as well. So
and the danger is basically, especially if you're taking the government money, and what did Alex just say? Well, you can't teach Bible anymore.
Right.
So are we much like the 501c3 being levered against churches to not speak truth?
Yeah.
How much more now are you dependent on voucher money for your income.
It's similar to what happened in Nazi Germany, where Hitler said basically, I will take care of the churches, and started controlling them. They became state-funded churches. Well, if I can just be brutal about it, if your church has a Christian school that's taking state funding, it's not federal money, it's state money, and now your church is using that money as part of its operating budget, you are at least partially a state-funded church. Think about that for a minute. And now tell me how likely you are as a church body, church leadership, when the order comes down.
I was going to say, to speak the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Right. So when the order comes down, well, you can't discriminate anymore, right? How many of them are going to back off? How many of them are going to give up the money?
Like he's talking about the hiring practices.
Yeah. They're not going to give up that money. They're just not. This is how, and this is the point that we make in Title IX, and when we're talking about the subject, is this is how they're going to silence the churches, because it's all about money. That's always how it's done. And so tell me with a straight face that the same churches in America that by and large, when the government 4 years ago said you have to shut the doors and you can't be open on Easter because of the Rona, and they all complied. Well, we went under what? We want to be good neighbors. So you tell me with a straight face that those same churches with that same kind of leadership is going to stand up to this when now there's $1 million a year of your operating budget up for grabs. You're going to give that up? No, you won't. You go along with it. That's what you'll do. So that's the further explanation of the vouchers.
Sunshine and lollipops here. Here we go.
And like he said, and we have said, and I've said this over and over again, right now it's great. In a state like Indiana, and he points out Florida is one of the best, and Indiana is right up there. Right now it's great. There really aren't any restrictions on it. For now.
For now. Buyer beware.
But what happens when they change their minds? Because they will.
Yep.
And yeah. So that's the further explanation on that. I have one more thing that I wanted to share here. This is just, as we're recording this, by the time you listen to this, by the hour, by the day, the rioting, I'm talking about the rioting now that's taking place, is
in California.
In California, but it's going to spread.
Of course.
So in line with what we were talking about last week about preparing, just being prepared, we'll start at the higher level here. We know as believers that things are going to go from bad to worse. We know that as believers, we're not going to be here on earth when the Antichrist rises up, but we are going to see everything leading up to it. And things are going to continue to go that way.
Can we just pause for a moment and just point out, especially if you read the Old Testament and even New Testament, but especially the Old Testament where there's all the wars and everything that's documented in there, if you can just realize that things are cyclical.
Yeah.
And there's nothing new under the sun.
So preparing ourselves as believers and knowing that we are in the last days and you're going to see more and more of this stuff happen. Now, here's an interesting clip that I wanted to share from Fox News. I'm just going to play this and then we'll talk about it.
But when I look at the people who are out there doing the violence, that's not the people that we see during the day who are legitimately out there exercising their First Amendment rights and to be able to express their feelings about the immigration enforcement issue. These are people who are all hooded up. They've got a hoodie on. They've got face masks on. They're people who do this all the time, get away with whatever they can, go out there, from one civil unrest situation to another, using the same or similar tactics frequently. and they are connected. Some would call them anarchists or by any other variety of names, but they're people that we run across routinely city to city, and this is what they do. So even more disgusting that many of the people who are doing this come in from other places just to hurt people and to cause havoc.
So if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, you'll recognize these terms. And if you need further explanation on this, go and watch Dysphoria. Fearlessfeatures.org. Dysphoria. Does dysphoriamovie.com still work? Still points to it?
Yep.
If you watch Dysphoria, we talk about the anarchist communists. They're called Antifa. Anti-fascists. They came, it's as old as time itself, but the Antifa ideology is originated in Nazi Germany. The anti-fascists, they're the communists fighting against the fascists, right? So when you see them come out in all black, and that's called Black Bloc. And that is basically the uniform of Antifa. So they all dress like that. They want to disguise who they are. And they do come out, and mostly at night, right, is when they do their damage. You've seen this in Seattle. You've seen this in Portland. You saw
all major cities. I mean, we have them even here in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Yeah.
You've seen them.
Interestingly, when the George Floyd riots happened, and we actually had that here in downtown Fort Wayne, and afterwards I talked to several law enforcement officers, and they said it confirmed what I had heard, is that the vast majority of those came in from out of state. They were bussed in, and they destroyed a lot in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So remember how the George Floyd riots spread, the BLM, Antifa. It's going to continue. It's being financed by globalists. And we were talking about this morning. So if you are listening to this, and I'm just going to ask a simple question. I'm not criticizing. I'm going to ask a simple question. How many of you listening have ever actually gone to a public protest, or gone to speak at the State House, things like that? Very few. Why? And I'm not being critical. I'm saying we're the same. Even though we do this for a living, there's only so much we can do that. Why is that? Because we have jobs, and we have responsibilities, and we have families, and you have to make an income to pay your bills. And so then let's ask the obvious question. So when you see a bunch of kids, primarily kids, young people, that somehow manage to be able to go out every night, and they seem to have supplies, they seem to all have phones, they seem to be organized. People leave pallets of bricks for them to throw. They've got fireworks and things that they're throwing. This stuff all costs money, and it has to be paid for, and they are also being paid. They're paid protesters, and that's what he was saying. When he's talking about anarchists, this is Antifa and their ilk. So they're being paid to cause chaos and destruction by the globalists who want to. They're trying to goad Trump into overreacting. They want civil war, is what they want. So that's what's going on. Keep praying for Trump and all of his administration, because if Biden was still in power, or if what's her name, Kamala, oh my word, can you imagine?
I don't even. Thank you, Lord.
Just thank the Lord that He has given us the right man in office right now. And when you see the Democrats, especially Gavin Newsom, pitching a fit that Trump is sending in the National Guard and the Marines to handle this, and he's defending these people. You know exactly what's going on, right? This is good versus evil. They have to bring down America. So keep praying for America and praying for our president.
And even pray for the people who are out there protesting who are so lost.
Yeah.
I mean, listen.
But what
they need Jesus too.
Yeah, but what you can do is, you know, if you're traveling over the summer, things like that, or if you're in a city where you're prone to these types of things, if you are under predominantly Democrat control in your state, in your city, you're prone to this. This is where they get away with it. They don't do this in places where they think that they're going to get busted. Because it's a whole system. Not only are they paid protesters, but they've got a fleet of dirtbag attorneys that will spring them, right? The difference now is that Trump has the DOJ going in, and they scoop them up and they charge them federally, and it's a lot harder for them to get out of it. So if you're traveling, just be aware of these things. Do not try to.
Do not engage.
Do not engage. Don't go anywhere near it. You are not going. You're not going to win this fight.
Zero-sum game.
Yeah. Do not go, I'm going to go drive right through them. No, you will get yourself killed and somebody else. And then it's not about what's right and wrong. It's about who is enforcing what law where you are. So the reason they do this in these liberal nut job areas is because the DAs and the prosecutors are on their side. So they'll prosecute you and not
Batman.
Yes, it is. It's Gotham. So avoid all areas of Gotham. That's all I'm going to say. Stay out of trouble.
That's right. Well, that's all the time we have for today, friends. Thanks for listening through to the end. Be sure to click that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And share this with your family and friends. Until next time, march on, saints, and be filled with the Spirit.
I'm your Huckleberry. Just like it.
Hey, what happened?